This is day 2 of the April 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. It's such a marvelous thing that there can be one thing in our life which we need not rush about. And that's coming to and being in a retreat. Is that so for us? Because if there is the rushing mode going on, which it can subtly, underneath everything, it's so deeply wired. If the rushing mode is happening, it can be listened to. The moment there's some awareness of it. And we don't have to just go and move with it, but sit quietly and listen to this hum of rushing. Trying to do something, trying to get something done, trying to get someplace. Just listen to it. Like a motor buzzing. Of course, one may have the idea that one has to do something here. One comes to accomplish something, does one? Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe one has been here before to have heard this whole thing of getting someplace called into question. Yesterday in a meeting, somebody said something which I will mention in a moment, but first say that I do not remember verbatim what anybody says. By the time I remember it and jot it down, I don't remember the exact words. Maybe leave out sentences. But I remember the gist of it. And if it is reformulated, also due to other people saying similar things, then please don't think that you haven't been listened to because it is not exactly the question that you put. Everything changes. But if we bring up a question here, it's a new question for all of us to look at. So someone said, I've been doing this for over 2 decades. Trying to control my thoughts, trying to achieve peace, liberation, putting an enormous effort into methods like holding on to koans, mandalas, mantrams. And it got me nowhere. Now, suddenly, there's no need to control thoughts. Let them come, let them go. There's no effort in this. There's a choicelessness in a simple awareness, almost so simple it can become scary again. A simple awareness that is either there or it is not there. But when it is there, it is no effort and no choice. And the facts that thoughts come is no problem. They can be seen, coming and going. the questions that arose in the course of this meeting were, is there a cause to awareness? Does awareness at least have favorable conditions in which it can flower, have greater odds of appearing? Is there really no use to spending effort? Which is what most of us do most of the time. Either in the worldly life, trying to get someplace, do a good job, get more money, be recognized, get famous, be published. Or maybe sickening of the worldly life, trying to enter the spiritual life, and the same rushing, trying to get someplace, the same effort to become something, somebody, a liberated person, an enlightened being. One thing the first person said was, engaged in this effort and not getting any place for it, with it, there was a sudden giving up. And later someone asked, well, since you were engaged in effort, and since traditions are engaged in effort, the effort of retreats, koan practice, or whatever all we submit to engage in, maybe it's necessary to spend this effort to have something to give up. But if we proceeded on that basis, we would be in a very poor way, because we would constantly be watching, is this bearing fruit now, this new method of engaging in effort in order to eventually give up? That's the beauty of trying all methods and realizing that whichever way we turn, there's always another way to turn. And watching the whole spectacle, seeing the whole thing, like listening to the rushing, which is not just mental rushing, the whole organism is engaged in trying, expecting, efforting, grasping, and a sudden switch of just listening to it. Not even listening to it. In the listening, this will reveal itself. The conditioned mind will shine forth as the fields and cities and highways, when the sun breaks through, everything is illuminated, including the beer cans and trash along the highway. So, this perennial question, does awareness have a cause? Favorable conditions, conducive to becoming quiet, attending, listening. Because how could we negate it? We're engaged in this business of holding retreats. 10 times a year, 12 times a year. And you all have noticed how careful we are instructing each other to be quiet, not to disturb each other, so that there can be resting as well as sitting, and quiet eating and bathing and working. See, one needs to find out for oneself, as many people are doing or have been doing, what it is all about, this quietness, without making a stone monument out of it. Inscribed, this is how it has to be, this is what is necessary. To be flexible, open, in touch, to find out what it is about sitting quietly, eating quietly, communing quietly as one works together. Maybe suddenly noticing the knife in the hand, the sound of cutting a carrot, or cleaning, washing a toilet. Suddenly feeling, seeing, touching something which is always there when the clouds of thinking about our life, past and future, part a bit. Letting the light shine through and watching the hands work like in a dance. Remember that for the first time I noticed this, having come home from a sesshin in Rochester, putting the dishes away, wiping them and putting them away, and watching these hands, and the movement was just like watching a dance, unrehearsed, spontaneous, alive, unself-centered, not constrained by self-centered thinking. Which here, when I say self-centered thinking, I don't mean it critically. I mean, let's watch what it does, how it constrains and rigidifies, narrows the field, darkens the light. You may say, wait a minute, that's not all I observe. Sometimes self-centered thinking, meaning thinking about myself, my future, my prospects, really arouses energy. It's the amazing thing that a lot of energy can be aroused by our goals, our striving, our ambitions, our plans, which when we have no plans, no goals, we may just sink into lethargy, missing that energy, thinking something is wrong with us. And this is what may happen at the beginning of a retreat, beginning to sit quietly. Maybe initially there is some enthusiasm, we're all here together in this beautiful place, and I'm about to embark on something. These thoughts arouse energy, which helps one float along for a while. And maybe these thoughts change into other thoughts. What am I doing here? Is this nuts? To watch the impact of different trains of thought on our mood and level of energy. And if no inspirational thoughts buoy up the energy, then there may be, what was it in the last retreat? So many people started talking about sloth and torpor. These are Buddhist, not just Buddhist concepts, but they were used by the Buddha to describe how we human beings live a lot of our lives in sloth and torpor. And people felt this was exactly describing their condition in the retreat. And not to become too fixated on that, to rather wonder, what is this condition right now? Not this is my condition, but what is it? Sort of a change in wondering rather than into wondering out of suffering. do we find, because we're interested in this, do we find what it is, find out what it is about being quiet with people who are quiet? One can also go off alone, the warmer it gets. One can sit on the benches, on the woods, on the deck, quietly. What is it about that? And motionlessly for a while. And not that one is trying now to rationalize sitting quiet, make a thing out of it, try to win one's argument with oneself or others, but just, what is it about that? And not answer it from the files, from knowledge, but finding out as we sit quietly. Doesn't need to be verbalized, it can reveal itself. This ability to be with conditions as they unfold and defold. Thoughts coming, thoughts going, moods coming, moods going, like the weather. Hot today, cold tomorrow. And beholding it all, being with the whole thing. Effortlessly. By effortlessly, I mean simply not trying to gain something from it or to get someplace with this. Effortlessness does not mean absence of energy, but it is a completely different use of energy, not from here to there toward an imagined goal, future state, but energy gathering here in being with the pain, the depression, the anxiety, the mind going over a recent difficult, sad experience at home, in the family, wherever. And being with it artlessly, not knowing what to do with it, just allowing it to unfold, flower, and maybe fold up again, wither away, usually just to make way to something else. Interspersed with some moments of quietness in which nothing is wanted, nothing is needed, nothing is feared. These moments are there, but since we usually only count what is cognitively grasped, put into words, recorded, we don't realize what is happening from moment to moment, because a lot of these moments of simply being here, unadorned, undefined, at one with what's here, these are not recorded by the brain. And therefore, in perusing what has happened to us, this is skipped most of the time. And we're concerned with and critically engaged with all that has happened. Try to draw a balance. Excuse me. And often, as people report, they're not satisfied with what's happening there. Still so many thoughts. Like years ago, not much has changed. Thoughts coming, going, connected with their moods and emotions. And yet when questioning, often people volunteer it on their own. When questioning, how was it after the retreat? Most people say it was amazing. The beauty of stepping outside, the proximity, closeness with people, talking, and often a changed attitude, at least for a while, at home and at the office. So this being with things capacity maybe is being nurtured here, unbeknownst to oneself. Let's say unbeknownst to the recording brain. So, we were asking whether there are conditions which are conducive, causal, for bringing about awareness. Because very often people for whom this thing works quite well, where thoughts are not so much of a disturbance anymore, there's openness and absence of judgment, at least at times. They say this has nothing to do with quiet sitting, this awareness. It can happen anywhere, any place, any condition. Why make such a fuss out of this here? And make it into something. So, is that the truth? That awareness can happen any place, noisy, crowded, hectic, or quiet? See, again, where is one asking and looking from? Theoretically, to try to win an argument. And I'm not saying people who bring this up are trying to engage in argument. Don't want to be misunderstood. But for oneself, where is one coming from? And to find out how it is with awareness in daily life, it cannot just be settled by thinking about it or remembering it. Is there some awareness in one's daily life? And is it even clear what awareness is? Because awareness, that open space without duality, without individuality, fear or wanting, that's our true base, our true ground. It is everywhere. It's out of which birth happens. Birth, life, blossoming, decaying, dying, withering away. How can one say that it's always there? On what basis do I say that? Because when it's there, it's there. It's there completely. Without any time lapse. Unmoving, unmovable. And a shift occurs in seeing that the thought involvement, the self-enclosing movements of mind and body are the incidentals to this being here, openly beholding it all. So in our daily life of involvement with family, with job, with traffic, the way people drive, very frequently this is mentioned to me, that this is when one notices how all of these patterns are still there. One comes out of a calm retreat and somebody cuts in front of one. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, precisely. Somebody cuts in front. Is there vast awareness without any emotional triggering? Or is the first response a triggered response of anger or One has to look at it, see it, experiment with it, watch it. Sometimes watch the amazing change that takes place. One realizes whereas often that would be the only possibility to respond conditionally, with anger, with hurt. That all of a sudden, even though one can feel the trigger points, they don't lead to anything. The awareness seems to neutralize, or what is the word? Sort of like pull the plug, short circuit what has seemed so inevitably linked. At times. At other times, boom, there's the trigger reaction, no awareness there. One was already engaged in some kind of an enclosed space of dreaming or thinking, in which we're on autopilot with all of our past laid down patterns. So, how are we going to answer this question other than watching it for ourselves? Of course, we can engage each other in dialogue and look together. It's always good to hear someone else, to open up to that, to visualize what the person says and enter into it. But ultimately, we have to see in this life unfolding here how it is, with attention and inattention, and what happens when there's attention, or let's rather say awareness, and when there's no awareness, because the clouds are there, the cloud chamber. We were mentioning yesterday in the meeting that there is a difference between attentiveness or mindfulness, the way I'll use it right now. It may be used differently by different people. So if we use concepts, let's be clear, we make clear what we mean by them, or else we get into an unnecessary misunderstanding. What I mean here by being attentive or mindful is a response that can be learned and is being, people are trained in this in meditation centers, particularly, well, the one I'm familiar with is a Zen tradition, very strong tradition for being mindful, attentive. You get criticized, punished, called on the carpet for being inattentive. Attentive meaning that you're obviously there with the bowl, filling the soup into the bowl, so nothing drips down the sides. You're there with a crow as you fill the bowl. If you're too concerned that you fill the bowl right and be attentive, you may not hear the crow. You can learn, and a lot of us learn this, to be so obviously, meticulously attentive in whatever we do, and yet it is not an open place in which there's no attender, no me, aware of itself as being attentive, or self-conscious, I should use that word, self-consciously attentive. I used to mention this example a lot, I will do this again, of being in a sesshin, a retreat, a Zen retreat, where one person was standing just across the aisle from me. I was conducting the sesshin, and putting on a sweater in a meticulously attentive way, feeding each button through each buttonhole with great care, but not noticing that a pile of people were assembling behind him trying to get through this aisle. So what was going on in that head? I don't know for sure. I don't read thought. It's not necessary. It wasn't the openness. Not just to the buttonhole and the button, but what goes on around one. Unself-consciously, because it's the self-consciousness thinking about myself. How am I doing? Am I being seen? Am I doing right? Good boy, bad guy, bad girl. That has a way of stopping up the openness, gluing it up, making it sticky. So is it possible to be attentive to what one is doing and yet not get lost in the idea of it? One may find that the brain is very active, very habituated to giving itself an accounting of what is going on. Now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that, and I'm doing it well, I'm not doing it so well, others are doing it better, or not as good as I am doing it. To just, with great benignness and maybe a sense of humor, watch it all. Not down on oneself or up on others or the other way around, but watching this whole amazing show put together by human brains. Are there situations that are conducive to cultivating awareness? Practices, I don't know. Practices do something to the organism. You have to, if you're engaged in practices, you have to either bring it one, so we can talk about it one-on-one or in a group. I cannot right now fathom the practicing mind, except in the way we said earlier in this talk, trying and getting nowhere with the trying, because the trying shades the windows. But why do we hold retreats? Why is this life here, and has been for the last 30 years now, dedicated to this? Not in a ritual of dedication, I don't mean that. It's engaged in that, and will continue to be engaged in it as long as I'm healthy, capable of it. See, there's such a difference between doing it together, and facing the questions that come up as we go, to sort of theoretically making statements about it. That's always dangerous. There's a pitfall in it. Because no statement can cover the whole live thing, which is really not capturable in formulations. This whole thing of sitting, questioning inwardly, listening, attending, finding out about the conditioned mind. But in so doing, and maybe really in touch with the times where there is no goal-directedness, no effort, no self-centered evaluation going on, in touch with that, and realizing that in this in-touchness, whether it is with emptiness or with the difficulties of the moment, this body is learning something new. It is realigning itself to conducting energies in a different way from what it has been conditioned, through praise and blame, reward and punishment, schooling, verbalizing, thinking, interpreting, projecting. All of these activities of the brain and body have conditioned this body to conduct impulses and energies in a certain way. And one can feel in sitting here and something is heard, it does not need to be conducted into the interpreting, knowing, associating part of the brain. There can be remaining here with a sound. That's something new for the body to learn. And maybe this new learning and extended and repeated exposure to this sitting here, being here quietly, whether walking or sitting, maybe there is a connection between that and a more sustained awareness that isn't instantly blown over the moment a thought about myself arises. The moment somebody says something, I feel hurt or slighted. A sustained awareness, which is a groundedness in what is called our true nature. Not linked associatively, energetically with the personality, but with everything. The wholeness, whatever that all is, from moment to moment. Maybe enough has been said about this. It came up because it came up in a meeting. What I don't want to do is give cause for setting up ideal goals against something one wants to reach, because the brain is so habituated in instantly doing this, formulating it, holding it out for something to be gained, for comparison. Do I have it? Do they have more than I do? So watch the whole show as it happens, with a sense of humor, amazement at the world productions of the human brain and body. Listening is not a production of the brain. The brain in this quiet listening is quiet. It just does its thing of keeping everything in this microcosm going. Heartbeat and metabolism, and blood circulation, breathing. Well, but it doesn't dabble or meddle in stuff where it has no business at the moment of just being here quietly, in touch with the whole. We will end here for today.